Maybe I should open a place called Resolutions, where the first 2 weeks out of the year, you have gym equipment set up. After that, you set up the waffle buffet and coffee. Welcome to Grounded, the place to hear the salty truth. I'm your host, Scott Cates, coming to you live from the Northeast Georgia mountains and the tiny town of Tiger. Well, Happy New Year. I hope your holidays went well. I hope everything was great. Now we have that sort of lull that I like to call winter. This is the time for hibernation, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. At this point, growing up in Florida, winter's different. Snow in the forecast here in the tiny town of Tiger. That it looks like maybe Friday, but you never know. Even the Weather Channel sort of sensationalizes the weather. And I'm not sure, the prediction of big storms. We've talked about this a little bit. Sends everyone to Walmart to go ahead and buy the milk and the bread and the eggs, all of them. No matter what the storm, doesn't really matter. And it's kind of weird because below a certain line, people get ready to just sort of stay in when the rain is intense. They sort of batten down the hatches for that. Lots happened. Actually, a lot's happened over the last few weeks. Trying my best not to really talk about politics because, man, 2024 was just like this heavyweight lifted. I was telling some folks yesterday about how excited I was to sort of see 2024 go. And the relief that came when 2025 begins, like putting it all behind you to get on and move forward. Now, a lot of things have happened. Of course, we know what happened in New Orleans, the attack in New Orleans, and then also what happened in Las Vegas. We know about all of that. How legit all those stories are, who knows? Really, when it comes down to it, the over-sensationalizing of so many different things. I mean, maybe I'm just the only one to ask this question, but you actually have sort of a terrorist attack that happens and kills a bunch of people in New Orleans, Louisiana. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, out of nowhere, we have this car blow up, and it's sort of the exact opposite sort of idea, the exact opposite MO of the attacker in New Orleans to sort of take pressure off of the whole New Orleans thing, and in some ways it makes it look like it proves that your terrorists aren't just a certain way. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest with you. I just think it's real convenient that you have on one stage over here, on one side over here, you have this one that's dedicated to, this, to ISIS and all of that. Of course, we really don't know. We just know what's been being told. It's kind of like the job numbers that we've been looking at over the last year. You've been being told, and then they're revised 4 or 5 months down the road. So we have no idea what stories are going to be revised 4 or 5 months down the road. One thing's for sure, the media is loving every second of all of it because it's bringing in, people, viewers, advertising, all of it. Meanwhile, we're still under the Biden administration. So a narrative is being pumped out to us nationally that always has to have that revision 5 or 6 months later, whatever is being led. So you never know. Anyway, there are a number of things that I saw in the headlines that I thought were kind of interesting. As I'm looking today, it's amazing. Sort of the idea of what's going on. It's a brand new year, 2025. It's exciting. In spite of all the things that are going on today, obviously, hopefully by the end of the day, the election votes for the Electoral College will finally be all tallied and put in, and we'll have the official what's happening. We'll have the official ruling on the President of the United States. I loved the way the article, and it amazes me, the national media and how they do this. This is the lead headline on Fox News this morning says, Harris forced to preside over the certification of her own defeat as Trump claims historic 2024 win. Now, this is really interesting to me, how the media, even conservative media, sort of paints Republicans and Democrats. Now, it's been this way for quite some time. And it's the idea that Republicans are used to disappointment. And the truth is, oftentimes they are. Conservatives get used to disappointment because what's being overtaken is sort of a liberal narrative on a regular basis. And so the freedoms that you've enjoyed and the freedoms that you've enjoyed for a lifetime now are being sort of overrun by a narrative. And oftentimes the narrative that is being overrun by has nothing to back it up. It's just, can we push this? And yes, and it's being pushed. And so we all understand that narrative that's being pushed out of Hollywood and the narrative that's being pushed on America and the narrative that's coming from large corporations to America, which is now being dismantled even before Trump takes office. The whole Department of Inclusion and, all of that, all this DEI stuff that's now being pulled down in a lot of these corporations. It's like sort of like they've wiped their brow and said, thank God that's over. We don't have to worry about that at this point. It's a lot of pressure to go through that. But in the media, it points Republicans as used to being disappointed. So to be honest with you, when Republicans lose on any level whatsoever, it's not really painted as sort of a bad thing. It's almost like, oh, well, they're used to it. But when it comes to Democrats, it's like Democrats don't lose well or something. I don't know. According to the media, I'm not saying this. This is according to the media. So the reports like this on Harris that, oh my goodness, Harris has to preside over her own disappointment and loss and all of this today. It just seems to be that every time that there is a loss on the Democratic front on the national scale of politics, it's a great blow to Democrats. But the Republicans are just used to it. That's just part of what I'm seeing. So, that's what we're seeing today. And it's kind of interesting because last time it took until 4 o'clock in the morning to certify the results of the last election because there was some controversy. But they don't expect to be controversy today. They think maybe they'll know the final results within an hour to 90 minutes. So be it. There'll be a transforming of power. There'll be a switching of power that comes up this month. It'll be interesting. And where you'll see America, which has been stamped into this mold of you must conform to this and you must conform to that and you're required to do this and the federal government will back you if you actually teach these principles and do these, all of that. It's about to be dismantled. There's going to be really a transformation of America in some ways if they can do it. And it's a transformation back to some ways that we really do need to sort of move in that direction. So, we have that all coming. So over the last few weeks, we've seen a number of things just take place in the headlines. I've not mentioned a lot of it because, man, the media had bogged us down greatly in 2024. So I'm doing my best to sort of move out of that. But it was good. It's good to cover a few headlines today. One of the big ones, this was the health headline that I saw. This was good, really. I thought it was an interesting headline. And I saved it to myself, and it was, it's this. It's alcohol linked to cancer risk in U.S. Surgeon General's new advisory. And when you take a look at this article, it's an interesting article. It says alcohol has been found to increase the incidence of at least 7 types of cancer. It goes on down to talk about the cancer risk. It's interesting that the Surgeon General, the research behind that, it says in particular, the advisory notes that alcohol can increase the risk of throat, liver, esophageal, mouth, larynx, which is the voice box, colon, and rectal cancer. Of course, we knew that it upped your chances of liver cancer and all that. But now, in some of these things, it's really interesting because when you go down to it and you get into it, the increase of the cancer risk, one of these things, breast cancer, 16% of all breast cancer cases have been linked to alcohol. So it actually, when you get into it, you begin to take a look at it, You see, it ups the chance of breast cancer in women. And it goes on down. I mean, it talks about the things that go on with men, part of it. So alcohol raises the risk. And this is something, and then it goes into the details of the fact that we were told for a long time that a small consumption of it actually would either fight that or fight certain things off. And in the end of this article, it says that's never been proven. As a matter of fact, it has more detrimental side effects than the rest. Blows my mind. So suddenly, all of a sudden, we have this coming out. Interesting to me. Very, very interesting to read that article. For those of you that have not read that, you should take a look at that Surgeon General's report. It's really interesting. It just says this, and this was really interesting. It says, though wine and other alcoholic beverages may relieve stress and dilate arteries for the short term, physicians warn that alcohol is a proven toxin with direct links to liver, heart, and brain disease. Now, so even though traditional advice has been up to 1 drink a day for women and 2 drinks a day for men, it finally comes down to this. The Surgeon General says no amount of alcohol is healthy. Multiple studies have shown that 25% of people that increase their alcohol use lower their immune system. Anyway, it just goes on. Interesting article today. Just a few things. We're just sort of hitting the highlights as we get into a new year. Boy, I'm excited about a new year. I am. Lots of New Year's resolutions that are floating around out there for sure. I love the sign that I saw that was from Dairy Queen that someone sent me a picture of. It says, ruining your New Year's resolution since 1962. That's true. There's no doubt about it. Nothing like your friends walking up and saying, hey, let's go to Dairy Queen. And we do this often with each other. Let's just go to Dairy Queen. And so New Year's resolution and things are... It's just interesting. So resolutions taking place. Sorry, all over the map today for just a second. I'm sort of looking here to see all of the things that I've placed to the side. I've got a ton of things in my stack today that I'm wanting to talk to you about. So, I over the holidays, over this period of time, I talked to you last week or the last podcast. By the way, we're in season 3, which is 3rd year, episode 1. Thank you for those of you that have been listening from the beginning. Good to have you back again today. Hope your life is great and things are going well. I hope great things happen for you for the new year, no doubt. I've learned, I keep telling you, I'm looking at this book. I put this book on the back burner a little bit. It's called The Extinction of Experience, Being Human in a Disembodied World. And I opened up and I've read just a few pages. It was interesting. But I'm seeing this extinction of experience truly happen on a large scale, especially with the current generation that's coming up. And I wanted to kind of talk to you about this because I had a Christmas party with a bunch of students. It was really a great time, a bunch of students, 7th through 12th grade. And I was going through Walmart, and I saw they had Rock'em Sock'em robots. They'd reissued the Rock'em Sock'em robots, which came into existence, I think, 63, 64, 1963, 64. So most of us have grown up with Rock'em Sock'em robots. It was the early 70s, and we got a set, and we had a ton of fun. And it's fun to use those with students. And so I bought a few sets of those, brought those to a group of students, and sat down and said, we're about to have the Rock'em Sock'em Robot Championship. Now, you remember the toys of the 1970s, late 1960s, the 1970s. They were amazing toys. They really were. So I brought these Rock'em Sock'em robots into this group of teenagers, and they were fascinated with the way they moved. And I had some of my students pick up those toys and look at those. How did these work? You're having to use your hands. You actually have to touch these. And it was just a fascinating thing. So we got done actually with that. We had the championship. We finally had a winner. We actually broke out into brackets. Had a great time. Had a winner. At the close of that, we were all sort of hanging out together. I had a group of students come and sit down and talk to me. And they asked this question. They said, wow, so they made this toy when you were a boy? I said, yes, they did. And they said, did they have other cool toys like this when you were a boy? I said, oh, absolutely. So I began to sort of go through and talk to them about the toys that we had when I was a kid. And it brought back some memories. Mattel was a great company that released a number of great toys that were pretty solid in the day. They made a toy, one of our favorites, and we would get it often. One of our favorites was called the Vertibird. The Vertibird. That's a V-E-R-T-I, Vertibird. And it was a helicopter that was attached to an arm that had a set of controls that were wired to it and took D-cell or C-cell batteries. I think D-cell batteries went inside the base of it. And it was attached to an arm. And what it would do is you could turn the propellers on. It would raise up the helicopter and it would fly it basically in a circle. And we had all kinds of we had the fire and rescue version. We had the Coast Guard version. They had a Coast Guard version of that, the sea rescue. They even had a winter rescue version. They had all kinds, so many different versions of the Vertibird. But what was so amazing about it was, at that point, it was the closest thing to real flight that you could actually see. You could control it. You could make it hover. You could make it land on certain things. It would pick up little baskets and things like that and fly them around. The rescue, it would pick up. Man, it was a great toy. And I began to talk about those toys of that era. And it brought back some memories. When I was a kid, my grandfather always loved to provide us with cool toys. He loved flying toys, I think. He just loved those. So the Vertibird was something on the list that he made sure we had. When they'd catch it, or if ours would wear out, he'd bring another one or whatever. But another toy that he had when we were kids, it was an airplane, and it was about the size of the wingspan, probably of your iPad Pro, probably the size of it had a wingspan about the size of an iPad Pro. The whole plane would have probably sat on top of an iPad Pro, but it was connected to this cable that was covered in sort of a flexible conduit that came, and it was probably about 3 feet long or so. This cable, maybe a little less than that, and it was hooked to what looked like a flashlight. If you have a flashlight and you unscrew the body of a flashlight, and you put your D-cell batteries inside a flashlight, it was screwed to what looked like a flashlight carcass or whatever. And you would put your batteries in it, screw it down, and it would spin the propeller that was on the plane through that conduit, and you would hold it up above your head and push a button, and it would turn the propeller on and fly in circles around your head. And we had tons of those toys when we were kids, as well as balsa wood airplanes that we would put the rubber band on and wind at the propeller and throw those, because we didn't have remote controlled toys like that. Remote controlled aircraft were so expensive. Even when you got into the 1980s, they were so expensive that you just couldn't touch anything like that anyway. So we had flying toys that were like that. One of the favorites was a rocket, and the rocket, they had these little rockets, and they were made of plastic, and you would put water inside, and you would leave a little space for air to come out. And what you would do is you would go and fill up the rocket with the water, leave a little air, turn the rocket upside down, and face it toward the sky. And you had a pump that you would pump with your hand, just a hand pump you would pump with your hand, about like those little pumps that pump up like footballs and basketballs and things. It was about like that. You'd pump that thing, and you'd pump that thing, you'd get it really tight. And that rocket was a sort of a latch would go over the end of where the water would come out of it. And it was locked on there until you were ready. And you would pull a little trigger at the bottom. It would release that latch, and it would fire that rocket into the air with some serious force. Now, when you're boys, you have to be creative. You're playing outside. I mean, outside play as a boy in the 1970s, you just had to be creative with those things. And so I've talked to you before about the fact one of our favorite toys was the Evel Knievel stunt cycle, where you would wind up. You get that thing wound up, and then you'd pull the little lever, and Evel Knievel would come off of that thing, and you'd have him jump. You know, he would be on a jump. We would build jumps for him to jump off of. You know, we'd run him down the roof line, and he'd come off the end of the roof. I mean, because the wrecks were the most important. So what was really fun is when you got creative enough and you got enough water in one of those rockets, and you had somebody at the end of the driveway wind up that Evel Knievel and send Evel Knievel in your direction while you fired off one of those rockets trying to knock Evel Knievel off of the motorcycle. And these were fun days when we were kids. So I was going through all the cool toys we had, and these kids were fascinated. They literally were fascinated. They were like, wow. As I explained, the experience, by the way, playing with those toys had some imagination and some experience. And then what was amazing about that is you had all the stories to tell after it was over about what you done. Man, I got this cool rocket. We fired this off. It was really neat, you know. Man, I knocked Evel Knievel off of the motorcycle, whatever. These were the stories. And they were stories of this experience that you had, this one-on-one outdoor imagination type experience. But you were outside, you were playing, you were on adventure, you went out, you rode your bikes, man, you played, you know, Army. And you had to argue. It wasn't like, you know, you had something proving that you were shot. You had to argue. You'd say, I shot you, you're dead. No, ricocheted, you missed me. Those were the days. And so my kids, they were asking me, you know, they were sitting there, these students, they were asking me, they said, hey, let me ask you a question. You know, did you ever play chess? And of all the games, really, that I was talking about, they asked if I had ever played chess. And I said, sure, I've played chess. Absolutely. I said, chessboard was important when we were kids. There was nothing like pulling out that board and setting up those pieces and moving those pieces. And I was talking about moving the pieces. And I was talking about laying out the chessboard. Now, I even spoke to a group of people yesterday that there were students intermingled in the group. And while I was speaking to them, I said, these students, I was talking about that, and their response was, we've never done that. I said, what? I said, you play chess? And I'd asked them already. I said, so do you play chess? They said yes. And I said, so, you know, there's nothing like laying out that board and moving the pieces. They said, we've never done that. And I said, wait a minute. And stopped. For just a second, I couldn't even fathom, how do you play chess without laying out the board? And they said, we've only played online. It shocked the daylights out of me. Absolutely shocked the daylights out of me. Also, for this Christmas event, we brought, they asked me if they could bring gift cards. And they did. It was the first time ever I'd seen gift cards that were based on, they were gift cards for certain games that they played online. And so these digital games that they played online, the only experience, and so what I'm discovering is the only outdoor experience and the only playing experience they actually have is to play organized sports in school. Outside of that, there's no outdoor play. You're indoors and you're online. And the talking about the experience is the experience that you're programmed to see online on an endless basis. And it shocked the daylights out of me. So I determined a couple of things out of this. I thought, you know, maybe here at this point, there needs to be some sort of something that takes place. I realized this. I started thinking about growing up as a kid. You know, I don't know about you, but there were, you know, instead of there being sort of the digital reward thing was totally, completely so far away from us. I remember reading cereal boxes. Do you remember this? Actually sitting and reading cereal boxes when you were a kid. And there were prizes in these boxes. I mean, you bought Kellogg's and you bought these. There were prizes in the boxes, and you got this cereal, and there were these prizes. And so there was an incentive to actually get up early in the morning. There was an incentive to get up early. You would get up early because you wanted to be the first one to get to the box to receive the prize. It had some sort of incentive to get up. My daughter even told me one day, she said, Dad, the whole reason why I went to school for biology and chemistry, it was to find out. She said, I began to read the ingredients on cereal boxes, and I thought to myself, what in the world is that? And she said, it intrigued me because I could read the side of the cereal box and all the chemicals that were in the side. And she said, I thought to myself, I wonder how that affects the human body. So she went to school for that, all from reading the cereal box. We learned how to get up early because there was a prize in the cereal box and some incentive to get up early to get to that prize. So in your standard cereals like Fruit Loops and Apple Jacks and Sugar Smacks, then you had Captain Crunch. Remember Captain Crunch? Captain Crunch left that film on the top of your mouth when you ate it. There was something about that. It was like candle wax that was stuck to the top of your mouth when you got done eating that. I remember in the moments when I ate Captain Crunch, I was thinking to myself, this can't be good for you. Even when I was a kid, I was thinking, this just can't be good for you. So, Corn Pops. Y'all remember Corn Pops? Before Biden, the real Corn Pops, the little yellow things that came in. Corn Pops were one of my favorites. They came in sort of an aluminum foil packing. But all of it taught you to rise up in the early morning so you could beat your siblings to the prizes that were in the box. Prizes that came in like Cracker Jacks. You remember Cracker Jacks? That popcorn, and that came in the cardboard box. Cracker Jacks had a little prize on the inside, and getting that prize was why you bought the Cracker Jacks. Because the truth is, Cracker Jacks, and I know some people today still say, well, I love the taste of Cracker Jacks. Cracker Jacks, when we were kids, tasted like the cardboard box. And like those Cracker Jacks had been in that cardboard box for a year or more. We weren't eating Cracker Jacks for the Cracker Jacks. We were eating Cracker Jacks for the prize. And those were just, in the days we were growing up, those were fun things. And I wonder today if the reason why kids have a difficult time getting out of bed is because of the fact that they've been robbed of the experience of getting to the prize early. I mean, I don't know. And it had seriously, if you remember, it was all about sports and things like that too in the 70s. But man, you got a prize you got a little tiny football helmet as a prize. I mean, really substantial prize, not like tattoos in the box. I mean, cool prizes. Some of those prizes today, if you look those prizes up online, they're expensive. Boy, some of the toys from that era I looked up. I was like, well, maybe I'll find a vertibird, an old vertibird, and show it to my kids. Not at $400, I'm not. But there's an extinction of experience is the point I'm trying to get to. And so there's sort of a disconnect. And so what I'm going to do, I think, at this point, is in the years that come forward, I'm just going to say we're going to not get gift cards. Now, what I wanted to do was I wanted to say, let's just go out, let's make the limit $10. And then I went to Walmart myself to go take a look. You can't buy anything for $10. $10. My goodness. This year at Walmart, I walked through and I came home and I told my wife, I said, oh my goodness, the prices are unbelievable. They really are. $100 spent's like spending $20 5 years ago. Feels like it, really. So everything has changed. Everything has changed quite a bit. And there's this extinction of experience. So I think what I'm going to do is tell them no gift cards in the years to come. But we're going to just get out, and the experience of actually going and finding something is important. So that they can actually go and find something. The other thing we're going to do, I think, coming up, with that is I work with students too as well, is we're going to do some things that have hand-on experience. I think I'm going to bring a chessboard in and say, this is how you set one up. We're going to do some things that are practical experience. And let them experience that. Because what I'm seeing is there's not a lot of that going on. Now, if you're a parent today, or if you're a grandparent today, I encourage you, in 2025, getting out there for experience is important. Now, let me explain also what happens. Yes, we had Saturday morning cartoons when I grew up, okay? We had Saturday morning cartoons, and they were filled with commercials, most of the time about cereal, Frankenberry. I mean, all these cereal commercials that were on, yes. But today, commercials fill everything. We're hammered by commercialism 24/7. As a matter of fact, when your kids play online, it's not just about them playing online, but being online. Just like for you, now there is an AI system that is out there that is learning your algorithms. How you talk to someone, what your interests are, learning every single detail about you so that you can be bombarded with advertising for whatever it is that you're interested in. If you pause a second to look at anything online, boom, the commercials will come up that would be, would say you're interested, that thinks you're interested in being a part of whatever it is that they're selling. We're bombarded by commercialism. And we're bombarded by it 24/7 now. It doesn't really matter. I've talked about some of that before. And it's overwhelming. In Walmart yesterday or 2 days ago, I was in Walmart, and I'd gone in there just to pick up a few staple things, but I had walked over to where the Christmas section still sort of existed. Everything's down at clearance at 75% off, but right next to it they had Valentine's. Valentine's were up. So you've got the red and green of Christmas, and you've got all the red heart candy boxes of Valentine's. And as I walked over there, I thought to myself, man, I am like holiday oversaturated. It feels like being holiday oversaturated. You're just bombarded months ahead of time for the new holidays that are coming up. It's not a few weeks before a holiday. I mean, it's 2 months before a holiday begins. And so I began to take a look at all of that too and thought to myself, man, it just never lets up. The commercialism never lets up. And that's what really got me started in talking about this today. The commercialism never lets up. We're bombarded with it 24/7. Then the media bombards you with their narrative on a 24/7 basis. And in the middle of all of that is filled with commercials as well. So there is this incredible weight that's being put on people today of all walks of life. And the whole initiative is to conform you to this world. To get you conformed to thinking this way, to get you conformed to moving this way, to get you conformed to moving in this direction. And I began to think about, we'll make New Year's resolutions and we'll begin to look about what we're going to do in the new year. The truth is, stop for just a second with me. At this first podcast of the year, let's talk about transformation. Let's talk about being transformed. Romans chapter 12, verse 2, Paul says this: do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. There's a transformation that takes place the more you hang out in the Word of God. When I talk to my students often, I tell them, you are who you hang out with. You become whatever it is you're hanging out with. And them telling you about their online, if you want to call it experience, but it's almost like online programming. I want to talk about experience. I want them to learn experience, hands-on experience. They were so, like I said, they were so fascinated with how Rock'em Sock'em robots that were invented in 1963 actually worked. They looked at those things. I mean, picked them up. It was amazing to them. I want them to have more experiences like that. that opens up a door. It's a fantastic door for you and I. It's a door of learning where the actual experience of life, doing something hands-on, doing something that's away from a screen, the actual experience of life attracts them like crazy right now. So introducing them to actual experience, hands-on experience about everyday life, and they soak it up like crazy. Well, there's a practical experience with Jesus Christ that is important too as well, as we teach our children and our grandchildren and each other. But in order to do that, it's going to take some discipline. It really is. It's going to take some discipline for us to put down our phones. It's going to take some discipline for us to really get off of that computer or that tablet and to get into the looking face-to-face, to make those hands-on experiences actually happen. Because, yes, I know our children are somewhat quiet behind the screen. And we're okay because they're not in your life bothering you, at this point. But our children are not a bother. Matter of fact, our children, they're there. They are the blessing, and we don't really realize that until they're gone. We're busy filling our lives with everything else because we have a busy life. Their life is consumed by other things that has now made them busy. And the truth is that maybe we should get off the merry-go-round and make those practical experiences actually happen. He goes on in Romans chapter 12, and I encourage you to pick up your Bible and actually read through Romans chapter 12, because I happen to believe that is the greatest New Year's resolution. The truth is, it's the greatest resolution of all time. It's who we're to be. That chapter is actually labeled in the New King James Bible as Christians should lead transformed lives. Yes, we should. Not only should we lead transformed lives, the truth is we should be leading by our life and its transformation, yes, in the lives of our children and our grandchildren and our friends and those who are around us. Lately, I've picked up these small boxes of they're just cards that you ask questions of people, and they're questions that get conversations started. We've had such a great time actually sitting down, me asking questions. Simple things. Things like, what have been the 3 most important things to you in your life? Simple questions like that where people have to think and get into this conversation. And they led to great conversations. Some of them are humorous. Some of them are about questions of faith. Some of them are questions of life. There was a box set that I actually picked up called Rekindle. It was really good, about how to rekindle relationships. A really great group of questions. Spending time together is not spending time together on your screen and texting back and forth to each other as you sit in your chair and they sit in theirs. Spending time together is putting down the screens, getting together, actually having that conversation, hands-on experience that is quickly becoming extinct. Now, however, I will say that when it came time for this year, the number 2 items, the items that were up for sale as far as telephones were concerned, the number 2 item that was sold this year were phones that you could only text and you could only call on. That was it. People going back to that. I'm not talking about flip phones. I'm talking about actual phones that were made just to text on and just to call on. No access to being online. It seemed to be very popular as a gift, and it's very popular. A lot of people don't want, and I determined a long time ago in my own personal life, I really didn't want all of that at my fingertips. I did not want my email coming to my phone. I did not want all the social networking that at one time, I don't have any social networking now, but at one point I had social networking, and all the messages that were coming in from that were going to my phone. So if you've got Facebook Messenger and Instagram, all of these things that are coming to your phone, Snapchat, all of that are being, sent to your phone. And I've shut a lot of notifications off so that the only thing I really use my phone for is a quick search to the internet in case I need something while I'm out. I can find the cheapest price and get it sent to my house. That's pretty easy. That's the one thing that I have on my phone. But the other outside of that is the ability to text message, yes. And I have the ability to talk by phone. That's it. That's all. I don't want anything else. My email, people say all the time, hey, I emailed you. Did you get that? Well, I don't check my email, but maybe once a week. That's about it. Not very often. I figure if you've got something important to tell me, you're either going to text it to me or call me directly. And I purposefully put that down because my life was too busy. I was glued to that screen all the time and didn't want to be that anymore. I use my phone for GPS. There once was a day, though, you'd print out like 9 pages of directions on MapQuest. Remember that? You'd print out 9 pages of directions on MapQuest and follow those directions as you turned, as you were reading those pages as you went down the road. Now the GPS just carries you where you're going. And it's funny because I like to actually run 2 GPSs at the same time. I'll run Waze and I'll run Apple Maps at the same time. And I'll do that and let them, when we get to Atlanta, I'll let them fight over which is actually the best route to take. And I've discovered, to be honest with you, and I hate to do this, I hate to actually plug one over the other, but I'll just tell you, I've discovered that Waze is usually the most correct. I just have. Most up to date on traffic and all of those things. But I use my phone for those things, and that's about it. I'm not sure that I want something learning my algorithms all the time. It's going to do that. You're being read all the time. I'm not sure that I want the tracking that's going on all the time. I'm not sure that I want all of that. Sometimes I do like privacy. I like a moment to just stop and it be just you and Jesus, and that the only person that knows where you are is Jesus. Where you go to the top of the mountain and you actually pray. Those are great moments. I don't need someone calling me and go, I see you're on top of the mountain. No. I went there to be with Jesus. Sometimes I just get away to get away. And those moments are important. To me, sometimes that's what freedom looks like. And unfortunately today, I see this. I see that being chained and captivated in the chains of that screen. And it's happening at all ages. And the extinction of experience, had we known in 2006 and 2007, when smartphones were coming out, what it would do. I wonder if we would have embraced that technology as we've seen what it's now done to the generations and continuing to do. I wonder. And the only answer to be able to do anything outside of that is to be able to sort of limit that access and purpose to get involved in the everyday experience, hands-on experience of life. When you do that, you will be transformed. And when you get in the Word of God and you begin to read it and make that a priority, your mind will also be renewed at the same time. Just a thought. Yes, it's January 2025. I can't believe that is the case, but it is. Many people make New Year's resolutions. I'm not sure what yours is going to be. But I can tell you right now, not just a resolution, but a change in my life is going to be to make sure that the experience of life does not become extinct to myself and to those who are around me. That's quite the task and quite the challenge. To not be influenced by media and the news and the commercials and all of those things. That's hard to do in 2025. But that your primary experience ends up being the Word of God and the people that surround you. By the way, that's a pretty good life. You've been listening to Grounded, the place to hear the salty truth. I'm your host, Scott Cates. We're in season 3, episode 1, and talking about being transformed. And if you're interested in the greatest transformation of all time that will take place in your life, the first one begins by giving your life to Jesus. Because the one person that will transform you completely will be Christ Jesus. Now, you come to know Jesus by understanding that your sins cannot be forgiven without him. And it is your sins that separate you from God. And until those are forgiven, the sins of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, of which Jesus went to the cross and died for, to pay the price for those sins so that you could actually walk with God and be close to him and have that transformation in your life. Well, until you actually stop and ask Christ to come into your life because you want him and to save you and forgive you of those sins, and that you want his guidance and direction in your life, transformation is difficult of any kind, especially on this level that I'm talking to you about. So the beginning of this true transformation that I'm talking to you about today comes with accepting Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord. If you've not done this in your life today, you can stop right where you are and just reach out and talk to Jesus. That's what prayer is all about. You can stop and say, look, Lord, I come to you today, and I need you more than anything. Forgive me of my sins today. I want to walk with you. I want you in my life. I want you to guide me. I want you to lead me. I want you to save me. Come into my life now, and he will change you. The next thing I would suggest, get into his word. If you're a believer in Jesus, it's been some time since you've been in his word, I encourage you, open those pages and read. It'll captivate you. And maybe, I don't know, maybe if it's been a while, maybe if you're a person that's been a while since you've darkened the doors of being with other believers in church, maybe you've gone through just a difficult experience in church having to deal with people. And so you're like, I'm not going back there. I'm not going back to that. The truth is that people aren't perfect. Only Jesus is. And the church will never be Jesus. And a lot of churches that are out there today have been taught the behavior that they have, which is anything but Christ-like in many places. I agree with you on that. But you can walk in and be a believer in Jesus Christ and affect change in the places that you go to as well. And maybe that's today. It's not that day to be isolated from each other and not the day to be isolated between believers. It's the day to walk in and let iron sharpen iron. And let our lives be changed by the presence of Jesus and each other. You've been listening to Grounded, like I said. I'm so glad you have. For those of you that have been listening to me now going into the 3rd year, thank you again. Glad you're listening. Hope that you have a great week and look forward to talking to you next Monday. Take care now.